Here's part 4 of our Chapter 2 video lecture series, this one regarding higher education tax credits. There's a lot of rules regarding education and how it affects your tax return. And possibly the best place to go to get a summary of all of these different effects is to take a look at IRS Publication 4012. And they update it every year. It's called the Volunteer Resource Guide. This is a program where relatively low or moderate income taxpayers can get free tax preparation services. But guide is open to the public. You can just Google for it. And it has a table of contents divided up into different topics, one of them being education benefits. So if you take a look at the table that's under this section, here are all different columns of different education benefits or possibly income that you got to report. We'll take a look at scholarship income when we go into the next chapter, chapter 3. And again, there may be credits and deductions and different ways of tax-free savings for education, higher education. But we're just focusing on these two here, two different types of tax credits. One is called the American Opportunity Credit, and the other is called Lifetime Learning Credit. So again, back on our 1040 form, we're going to be reporting the non-refundable credits here in Schedule 3, but the American Opportunity Credit is both non-refundable and down here, the refundable part. But let's take a look at Schedule 3. And then here in line 3 are going to be the non-refundable American Opportunities and Lifetime Learning Credit calculated on Form 8863. So let's take a look at that form. Now the place where you start off filling in this 8863 is not the front page, but we start off with the back side of this page here in part 3. This part 3 has to be filled out for each student being claimed on the tax return. So if you have 2 students being reported on one tax return, you got to do 2 of these page 2s, one for each student. So here's the student's name and the student's social security number. And then this column A and column B would be different college campuses or different training programs they go through during the year. Now, the information that you're probably going to be using to fill in these columns, including the amount of tuition and possibly scholarship they receive, is going to be first reported by the college, by the higher education institution on a form numbered 1098T. So let's take a look at that form. 1098T, tuition statement. So it would be generated by the college. Typically, the student can download it from his or her college account. So here would be the name of the college and the student name. And in box number 1 would be the amount of tuition and related expenses that were paid during the year. That's the key term, paid, yeah? Not necessarily charged for the year. Sometimes you prepay your tuition a few months before the semester starts, but that few months could be in the previous year. You gotta claim this credit in the year you make the payment. So here would be the tuition in box 1, but you cannot get a double benefit by using your scholarship money, which is tax-free, and then using this cost here. Here in box 5 would be the amount of scholarships and grants used by the college to pay off things like the tuition, maybe textbooks, possibly even room and board. You gotta reduce this tuition amount by any scholarship. If you don't, well, you have to if it was applied against the scholarship. And then that's going to reduce the cost and eventually reduce the credit we're going to be calculating. There's a lot of other detail here. This is one of the more complex credits to calculate, so our video here is just really an overview, and you gotta look at the instructions to the 8863 form to get the real nitty-gritty rules if your situation is complex. Okay, so let's go back to the 8863 form. You're filling in the college name. Again, there's two columns here for if you have two different campuses. And again, maybe you need more of this page two if you went to more than two campuses during the semester for this one student. And whether here they got their 1098T form, including the form possibly from the previous year, showing maybe there's some kind of adjustment. For example, a student could have possibly dropped a class and then maybe get a refund or reduced tuition. And that may change the amount of credit that has to be now paid back. Here it's looking for the ID number of the college. And it's asking here whether this student we're dealing with has claimed this American Opportunities credit. The old name was called Hope credit. So these two credits are basically the same thing. And the question here is asking whether the credit was used for this student on 4 different years, 4 different tax returns. This is the maximum amount a student can be used to claim the American Opportunities credits. Like you do the 2019 return, that would be 1 year claiming the student for the American Opportunities credit. Then the following year, 2020, 2021, 2022, that would be the maximum right there. Okay, so you cannot claim it for after 5 years, but then in the 5th year, maybe you're eligible for the other credit, the lifetime learning credit. Of the two, the American Opportunities credit is better, but you try to time it so you get the maximum amount. If you claim, let's say, $1 of American Opportunities credit, that's going to use up 1 of your years. That would be a waste, yeah? So maybe you would claim the lifetime learning credit for that year and save your big American Opportunities credit for a year. You can get the maximum. The American Opportunities credit is only eligible for students who are at least half-time. So in our UH system, a full-time student will be taking at least 12 credits in 1 semester. So you need to be half-time by taking at least 6 credits for that 1 semester. And then you're considered to be eligible for the full tax year. Again, it has to be only for 1 semester, at least half-time. But that's going to make you eligible for the full year for all the courses you take during that year. If you're less than half-time, then maybe you're eligible for that lifetime learning credit. Here it's asking whether now is another 4-year test, yeah? So you see this 4-year, this is tax years. This 4-year test here is grade years like freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. In other words, it's asking whether you've completed your bachelor's degree. If you do, then you're not eligible anymore for the American Opportunities credit. Although we know some students are freshmen for many, many years, right? So you're going to pass this test easily, but maybe you're going to be not passing this test for the tax years. Again, if you're got your bachelor's degree already, then maybe additional education costs will help you qualify for the other credit, the lifetime learning credit. And to be eligible for American Opportunity Credit, the student cannot be convicted of any drug charges here. Although, again, lifetime learning credit may be available for those students. Now, there's only certain costs that can be used for the 2 credits. Again, American Opportunities and lifetime learning credit. And the rules are more liberal, more open for American Opportunities credit and lifetime learning credit. Basically, lifetime learning credit, the only qualifying education expenses is tuition. In the case of American Opportunities, you're looking at tuition, fees, textbooks, supplies, maybe even computers to do your work. In the case of lifetime learning credit, generally only the cost for tuition. Okay, even though here for lifetime learning, you're required to buy textbooks by the class, by the college. It may not be a requirement to register for the class, so that disqualifies the cost of the books down here, but it still would be eligible over here for the American opportunities. Now, there's a dollar limit of costs you can report here per year per student, and that's $4,000 per student per year. Again, if you have two students, that will be done on another form with another $4,000 limit. In the case of community college tuition, you're pretty close for the whole year to hit this 4,000. If you're going to a more higher level college campus, you're probably going to hit this number real easily. So you definitely want to take the American Opportunities credit for that year. But this is not the amount of the credit. You have to go through a formula. The first $2,000 of this amount will qualify dollar for the American Opportunities credit. And anything in excess of 2,000, again up to another 2,000 to get to this 4,000, that excess only 25% is eligible. So when you total up the maximum amount of American Opportunities credit you can put over here, that would be 2,000 plus 25,000 of the next 2,000, or a total American Opportunities credit of 2,500 here in line 30 for this one student for the year. And here for the lifetime learning credit, you're not calculating out the credit, but you're calculating out the expenses eligible for the credit. So you're just putting in the dollar amount here, and we'll see on the front page there's going to be a limitation for the whole tax return, how much you can claim as expenses, and eventually the amount of the credit for lifetime learning. So you can read the instructions here in this lines, and we'll have a simple tax return homework assignment for education credits. Not real complex going to all the detail. But if you read the instructions here, it'll tell you to re-enter the amounts on the front side now of this 8863 form. So the top part of this form deals with the American Opportunities credit, and we're going to divide it up into two parts. One part is the refundable, the good type of credit, and the other part is going to be the non-refundable part that eventually is going to be combined down here with the lifetime learning credit. So up here, we're going to put in that tentative credit for all of the students that you're reporting on your return for American Opportunities credit. Remember the backside, you're doing one of these page twos for each student. Now you're summarizing all of those students here on the front of the first page of the 8863 form and the total of the American Opportunities credit. But they're not going to make it simple for you. There are limitations in the amount of the credit you can use here based upon how much income the taxpayer has for the year, and also determining the income limit by filing status. So here you can see married filing joint, and then everybody else over here. You see these dollar amounts? There really are ranges based upon this 20 and 10 here. So let me rewrite in the ranges here. So if you're married filing joint and your income falls within, taking into this 20,000 into account, 160,000 through 180,000, that's the so-called phase out range. If your income, that's adjusted gross income back on the 1040 form, is less than 160,000, then you get to use all of this credit here in line 1. If your AGI for married filing joint is over 180,000, that means you get to use none of this American Opportunities credit that you've calculated out on the back side of this form. In the case of single or other filing statuses, you kind of use this 10,000 phase out range. In other words, from 80 through 90. If your income is below 80, AGI below 80, then you get to use all of this credit. If your AGI is above 90, you get to use none of this credit. If your AGI falls within the range here, yeah, within the range, there is a phase out of the credit that's calculated in this lines over here using a percentage you calculate over here and you're multiplying by the credit to get a tentative credit. Again, if you're below those limits, the full amount of the credit, you just drop it down here. Now we need to divide up that credit between the refundable type, which is the good type, and the non-refundable type that's carried further down the form. The refundable type is going to be 40% of this previous line here. Okay, so that means 60% is going to be non-refundable. So here, this refundable type goes straight to the 1040 form as one of the good refundable credits. You bypass the Schedule 3 that summarizes non-refundable. You go straight to the 1040 form. But now for non-refundable types, here is the credit for American Opportunities credit. And we're going to enter here in line 10, not the credit, but the cost for lifetime learning that we had done back on page 2. You can see we're going all over the forms here. So this amount here for lifetime learning, we recopy it for all of the students, not just this one student here on page 2, but any other page 2s you have. And you write all of the costs over here in line 10. Line 10. But there's a dollar limit in the amount of costs you can use in line 10, and that's 10,000, not per student, but per the whole year for this tax return. And that goes here now in line 11. But that's not the credit. The credit is only 20% of what's in line 11. So here's your tentative credit in line 12 for the lifetime learning and excess American Opportunities. But again, no, this is just the lifetime learning credit. But again, there's going to be a phase out based upon the taxpayer's adjusted gross income. So here's the phase out range, 20,000 worth for married filing joint and everybody else 10,000. So the range itself, it looks like it's 116,000, and then here's the 20,000 going up to 136. And for the others, it's 58,000 going up to 68. So if your AGI is below 116 for married filing joint and below 58 for the other filing statuses, you get to use all of this credit. None of it is phased out. But if you go over 136 married filing joint or over 68,000 for all the other filing statuses, you get to use none of this credit. And that's calculated in these lines over here. Okay, and then we're going to eventually add in, let's see, this non-refundable part of the American Opportunities credit. And remember now, you only can use non-refundable to the extent of any taxes for the year. And that's going to be limited over here, somewhat calculated on this worksheet, taking into account other credits we've been talking about that are applied first. And eventually now that comes down to the amount we're going to use for the non-refundable type of education credits that we take back to our Schedule 3. So let's take a look at Schedule 3 again. So that amount in this last line is now recopied here in line 3. Line 3 as non-refundable, including the child independent care credit we had talked about in the previous in the previous video. Okay, and again, subtotal here in line 7, and then recopied back on the 1040 form on line 13B. Now remember, we had the refundable type American Opportunities Credit, and that's right here in line 18C. Remember, this is the better type of credit because this is the amount that can be refunded even though the tax liability has been reduced to 0 up here. Okay, so quite complex rules regarding the education credits. So you got to make sure you read the textbook, you take a look at the instructions to the 8863 form, and we'll just have simple examples or simple homework problems regarding this credit for our semester. Okay, go ahead and take a look at the next credit. I think that's going to be this retirement savings contribution credit. Okay, that's in the next video.